So I've been shooting film photography for about 3 months now, and most of the film stocks I have gotten have been stuff like Kodak XX, Portra 160, Ilford XB2 400, stuff like that that really renders a vintage look, really aside from Portra. Portra sometimes has that vintage vibe to it, aside from the sharpness. But I just really love the idea of creating a retro look, trying to capture something, that makes you think about the old days, even if you're young. You're like, oh, yes, the 80s, before I was born. Anyway, I just love the look of vintage film. And a lot of my favorite filmmakers, they shoot on these very specific film stocks. And then when I found out that I can get 35mm versions of that, I dove head first. And that's one of the reasons I got Cinestill 800T, because Cinestill 800T is basically modified Kodak Visions 3 500T, which T stands for tungsten. It just has the remjet layer removed, so it's more prone to halations and stuff like that. So when I got this roll in the mail, I was super excited to be able to try and recreate some of the looks I'd seen on film, but also have that motion picture look naturally without having to go into editing. So last week I decided to splurge a little bit and buy a roll of Cinestill 800T. Now this is a film stock I have wanted to shoot for a very, very long time, mainly because of night photography and also the effect it gets with neon lights, and there's just something about it. I just love the look, the aesthetic, the feeling it gives off. And also, night photography is something I really haven't done a lot of, and I would really like to explore that, not just with film photography, but also digital photography. And, well, after I got scans back, I was pretty happy with how they turned out. That music is legendary. So the first thing you're going to notice in these photos is, first off, there is a lot of noise or grain, and second off, there is a very powerful green tint in each of these photos. Now, I don't edit my film scans typically, so all of these photos are unedited. I watched a lot of YouTube videos about people who shot Cinestill 800T before I actually bought a roll, so I felt like I had a good idea of what to expect from not just the grain structure, but also the colors, especially in some of the daylight photos, but I was honestly impressed by how the daylight photos turned out. There was only one that I did a little color correction on, and I really didn't have to do much to it. And I didn't use any 85, 86, or 81 filters. And like I said, I was very impressed with how it did in the daytime, just with my normal lens. Now, the Pentax lens that I have is not the sharpest lens in the world, and that's why some of these photos are blurry. And also, to be honest, I have bad vision, so it is kind of tough for me to tell what's in focus, what's not in focus. I would probably do well with an autofocus camera, but nevertheless, I'm very happy with how these photos turned out, and I'm actually a fan of the halations. At first, I was kind of on the fence whether or not I like the halations or not, but I'm very happy with the look and effect that they give. So one of the first things that I noticed about Cinestill was the fact that it's very tough to shoot. In the area I live in, there aren't a lot of neon lights, especially neon signs. There's only really 2 places that have signs that kind of fit Cinestill. And I shot these photos over the course of 2 days, having to make return trips to a few places. And I really didn't like having to do that. Normally with 35mm photography, I like being able to kind of go out and shoot whatever I want, when I want, because, I can always adjust things in camera to make the camera fit the scene. And with Cinestill, I really wasn't confident in daylight photos with it, but now that I've seen how these 2 daylight photos turned out, I'm much more confident in Cinestill, and I actually might get a roll of 800T just to use during the daytime. I was that impressed with it. Now, one YouTuber, I can't remember his name, but he did a comparison between Portra 800 and Cinestill 800, and they were very similar results. And I've thought about going ahead and getting a roll of Portra 800 just to see how close I could get it to Cinestill. But the price of Portra 800 it's a little high compared to what I think it actually gives you. And also, I love the fact that Cinestill is converted motion picture film. There just is a layer of coolness to that. So overall, I have learned a lot about shooting on Cinestill 800T. There are a lot of things that I do differently, but for a very first attempt, I'm very happy with how these turned out. So some people like to edit their film photos, and there's nothing wrong with that. Each person is allowed to do with their own photos what they choose. Personally, I don't like to edit my film photos simply because I feel like it takes away from the uniqueness of each film stock. Overall, Cinestill 800T might be my new favorite film stock, although I think it is sometimes too situational to really use as like an everyday film stock. I am going to save it for special occasions, and you know, I might experiment a little bit more with the daylight aspects of Cinestill because about 90% of my shooting is during the daytime, so you know, maybe I'll go order another roll and do some experimentation. But I hope you all have enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you did, and feel free to comment below which photo is your favorite and what are your thoughts on not just Cinestill 800T, but also shooting film in general. You know, what goes into I guess picking out a film stock and all of that stuff. But hope you all have a great day, and that's it.